Thanks very much for that very warm welcome. My name is Dr. Mike Kennard. I'm a senior lecturer in strategy and innovation at the University of Birmingham Business School. It's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to talk about this topic here, innovation management, an extremely interesting and rapidly developing field, and also something that's very, very important for companies and organizations and businesses if they want to compete effectively both now and in the future. I guess I've worked in innovation management for approaching 25 years now, which seems a very strange thing to say. I guess time goes very, very fast when you're having fun. I actually started as an engineer. So I did an engineering degree and an engineering PhD here at the University of Birmingham in aerospace. And following on from that, I started work at Rolls-Royce PLC and stayed there for just over 10 years. Rolls-Royce is a global provider of aerospace and power systems around the world. And I had various technology management positions. Technology underpins the competitiveness of a company such as Rolls-Royce. If you're managing the research and technology program, you're looking at customer future requirements, how your future products can meet those requirements, what technology platforms you need to invest in to deliver those platforms, and how best to acquire the funding to do it, and also progress the project so they actually deliver what you need to compete. After Rolls-Royce, I undertook an MBA at the University of Nottingham, and then started working for universities. So my first position was an Innovation Research Fellow at University of Nottingham, working with a very large healthcare company to try to understand what the barriers to innovation were within that company. How could they become more innovative? What could the organization do to improve the innovation success rate? After the research fellow position, I went to University of Aston as the MBA director, and then back to the University of Birmingham as senior lecturer in strategy and innovation, and also the program director for the Advanced Engineering Management program. So a practicing manager, researcher, and also an educator in innovation is where my experience comes from. And in these last two positions, MBA director and a position at Birmingham, I've really tried to introduce and develop and put innovation management at the core of the curriculum. So it's not on the periphery, it's right in the center because it's so important for the future success of organizations. So what we're going to cover, firstly, innovation drivers. What drives companies and businesses and organizations to develop innovation? It's quite hard to innovate. It takes a lot of effort and time and a lot of money, and it'd be a lot easier if we just didn't bother. So what is it that actually drives organizations to develop innovation? Second topic we're going to cover is how do we define innovation? What do we mean when we say innovation? Innovation is a word that means different things to different people in different organizations in different contexts. As you develop your management experience, you will come up with your own definition of innovation. What does innovation mean to you? Third topic we're going to cover is generic innovation types. How can we characterize different types of innovation in terms of the risk that we're prepared to take and the reward that we hope to get? Fourth subject, we're going to kind of continue this really, really important area of risk and innovation, and we're going to explore what your own attitudes are to risk. Everybody's got a different attitude to risk, a different threshold to risk compared to the reward that they expect to get. Final topic will be a very, very short case study on the iPhone, a very innovative product that's come into the market. I'm sure some of you have an iPhone, so you'll be more expert in iPhones than myself. And then finally, we'll have some time for some questions and answers. But please, if you've got any questions throughout any part of this lecture, just put your hand up, ask your question, and I'll be very, very happy to answer it. So, what is driving innovation? If we look around the world, and if we look at society, we all know that we are facing some global challenges, and these are significant challenges. So climate change, energy supply, population growth, an aging population, economic stability, scarce resources, poverty, hunger, and disease that are still with us in the 21st century. Now, politicians and governments and presidents and prime ministers, they cannot solve these problems. The reason I say that on fairly steady ground is that if they could solve these problems, they would have done it by now. But we're still living with them. The best that they can hope for is to create the policies, the infrastructure, and the incentives for private sector, public sector, and charitable sector organisations to start solving some of these problems. But then if you look at, say, the private sector, they're facing challenges as well. They're facing market challenges. Challenges such as increased competition, emerging low-cost economies, shortened product life cycles, more sophisticated customers that have access to more information than ever before, higher raw material costs, rapidly changing technology, and much more demanding investors. Now, chief executive officers, boards of directors, and managing directors, they cannot solve these problems as well. The best that they can hope for is to create the policies, the infrastructure, and the incentives within their organisation that will allow their staff, their employees, and their managers to start solving some of these problems. And that's where you guys come in. When you leave this university and you take up your first management position, that will be the expectation. You'll be expected to make a real contribution to address some of these challenges and address some of the societal issues that we're facing as well, some of the global challenges. If you wanted some additional information, some additional data on just how difficult it is in the market, here is some data from the Kaufman Foundation, a fairly well-respected economic think tank, and it's looking at the Fortune 500 companies. So the Fortune 500 companies are the 500 largest and most successful companies in the United States of America. The United States of America is still the largest and most successful economy in the world. And what this data shows is that between 1995 and 2009, quite a short period of time, 56% of those Fortune 500 companies were replaced. No longer in the Fortune 500. And that's an incredible statistic. More than half of them fall out of the Fortune 500. You consider what the strengths and advantages you have if you're in the Fortune 500. You consider your products, your services, your market, your brand equity, your customer base, your distribution case, the finance that you have, the access to more finance, your customers, your knowledge, your competencies, your capabilities, your skills. You've got massive advantages within the marketplace. And yet, despite all of those advantages, more than half fall out. The everlasting curve of success that maybe these companies felt was going to happen in the future, it didn't happen. They either went bankrupt, or they were forced to merge, or they were acquired, or they were just taken over. The reason for this is because new innovative competitors come into the marketplace. They come into the marketplace with improved services, improved products, improved processes, and they can serve the market better. And eventually the market will leave the incumbent companies and go to the innovative competitors. These companies, tend to start very, very small, and then they rapidly grow. They rapidly grow so fast that before the incumbent companies even realize that they're under threat, it's too late. If you look at some of these examples of companies, some of these companies are innovating by having improved and differentiated products and services in the marketplace. So you can think of maybe Apple and the iPhone, a differentiated product. You can think of maybe Microsoft Windows operating system, a differentiated service in the marketplace. Some of these companies are innovating by reducing cost and reducing prices. So companies like Ryanair, companies like Dell have succeeded by really, really reducing their costs through innovation. Some of these companies have succeeded by creating new markets that didn't even exist. If you look at Google, the market for search engines, a new market now dominated by Google. Facebook, a market for social media. Started very small, grew very rapidly, created a new market, and is now dominating it. And some of these companies, they're succeeding by having new innovative business models. So if you look at maybe Amazon.com, a new business model for an online retail platform. If you look at Dell again, a new business model where instead of going to a shop to buy a computer, you now order online and you customize it. So they reduce their costs through the business model. So, what is the bottom line? What drives us to want to innovate? Companies that do innovate, they can identify and exploit new opportunities for growth. Companies need to grow. Investors expect companies to grow. And secondly, they can defend against new competitive threats. If you've got an innovative mindset, if you can manage innovation effectively, you can defend against new innovative competitors that are coming into the market and trying to attract your customers away from you. Companies that don't innovate, they die. They might die slowly, they might die quickly, they might die, and it's a complete surprise and shock to everybody. But eventually, if you're not innovating, if you're not seeing where the market is going, if you're not seeing what your future customer requirements are, your customers will leave you for somebody else. A company with no customers doesn't exist. It dies. It fades from the marketplace. So, hopefully, I've convinced you that innovation is important. What do we mean by innovation? What are the definitions of innovation? So, the origin of the word, it comes from the Latin word innovare, to make something new. Okay, innovation, it's making something new. If you look at some more up-to-date definitions, you look at one from policymakers, the UK government, the successful exploitation of new ideas. So the aspects of this, ideas, they're new, but you've got to successfully exploit them. You've got to successfully implement them, commercialize them, take them to the market. Second policy definition from the OECD, quite an influential economic think tank. Innovation is new products, business processes, and changes that create wealth or social welfare. Okay, so this word change. Innovation is about changing things, changing the status quo. And again, there's a benefit to innovation. You don't do it for innovation's sake. No matter how interesting it is, there's got to be a benefit. And in this definition, it's new wealth or social welfare. If you move to some academic definitions of innovation, first one is from Everett Rogers, very, very well-known academic in innovation. He came up with the theory of diffusion, how quickly a new innovation diffuses in the marketplace. His definition is an idea, a practice, or an object that is perceived as new. And I think the interesting word in this definition, it's this word perceived. Innovations don't have to be brand new to the world, okay, but they need to be perceived as new. So Apple's iPhone was not the first smartphone in the market, but when it came to the market, it was perceived as new. Google was not the first search engine in the market, but when it came into the market, it was perceived as new. Facebook, not the first social media platform in the market, but perceived as new. Because all of these products and services have got a combination of attributes and utility and value that differentiates themselves from their competitors, and they are perceived as new. Final academic definition, innovation is something different that has impact, from Harvard Business School Professor Scott Anthony. It's a very short one. Something different has impact. It's got to have some kind of value or utility or impact on the world. Okay, an innovation that doesn't have any impact isn't an innovation. And the last one, this is from an anonymous source, but I've heard it many, many times when I talk to businesses and managers about what they think innovation is. And they say, I can't define innovation, but I know it when I see it. Okay, I like this definition because it kind of captures the kind of nebulous and the kind of fluctuating nature of innovation. It can be quite difficult to define, but when you see it for the first time, you know you're holding an innovation or experiencing an innovation. When you hold an iPhone for the first time and you've never used a touch screen before, you've always used a kind of QWERTY keyboard, when you see a touch screen for the first time, you know that's an innovation that you're holding. A working definition that I use, which is by no means perfect, but it's my lecture, so you're going to get it anyway, is that innovation is the process which generates value from the creation, development, and the implementation of new ideas, technologies, products, and services. So I've picked out 3 words in red. The first one is process. Innovation is a process that needs to be managed. If you think the way to innovate is to hire a load of smart people, put them in a room, throw a lot of money there, give them an everlasting supply of coffee, and then cross your fingers, you're going to be unsuccessful. The best companies in the world at innovation, they have a rigorous process that they drive and they manage. So innovation is a management task. You will be managers. Your job will be to innovate. Second word, very, very important, it's value. Innovation creates value. If you are in the private sector in a business, there's many, many ways that you can express value. It could be higher turnover, higher profits, number of new products and services brought to the market, increased share price, increased dividend. Okay, but it's delivering some kind of value. If you're in the public sector, for example, our National Health Service, value is delivering your services more effectively, more efficiently, and at a lower cost. That's where the value is from innovation. And this last word, implementation. When you talk to a lot of people about what they understand, what they think about the word innovation, they tend to think about this kind of front-end area, the creation. Innovation, it's all about the creativity, the creation, the idea generation, and that is really, really important. You can't have innovation without new ideas, without creation. However, the most successful companies at innovation, they focus on this area, implementation. Okay, it's taking those new ideas, taking that creativity, and taking it through to actually coming onto the market. So implementation, execution, commercialization, whatever you want to call it. So the project management disciplines associated with innovation are super, super important. If you put all of your efforts into creating new ideas, but you're not taking them through development and through implementation, you will be unsuccessful at innovation. How can we characterize different types of innovation to allow us to think more deeply and more carefully about it, to allow us to develop more thoughtful strategies for how to manage innovation? Well, there are 3 very well-known characterizations of innovation. The first one is incremental innovation. The word incremental, it just means taking small steps over time. Most of the innovation in the world, even today, is incremental innovation, small improvements. The example we're going to use is the sailing ship. So the sailing ship is how international trade was conducted around the world for 1,000 years. If you were in the shipbuilding industry or the sail-making industry, you would be making small incremental improvements over time. So incremental improvements, there is a low controllable risk. Because you're only making small improvements, the risk of either the technology going wrong or customers not wanting what you've developed is very, very low. And people inherently kind of like low risk. Second one though, low reward. If you're making only small improvements, you're not going to be able to charge much of a price premium, so your reward will be low unless the market is very, very large. Thirdly, little long-term advantage. Because the steps you're taking are very small, it's easy to copy. When your competitors see that you've made an incremental improvement, an incremental innovation, they can copy you fairly quickly. So your competitive advantage in the marketplace is very, very short-lived. And finally, one of the things that tends to characterize incremental innovation is very, very close customer interaction. So if you're in the shipbuilding industry or the sail-making industry, when these ships come back into port, you're talking to the captains and the officers and the crew of the ships to try to find out how they got on with your new improvements and what they would like to see in the future. So very, very close customer interaction. So incremental innovation, very, very popular, and it works very well until something like this happens. A radical innovation. So this is a propeller propulsion system. It could be driven by coal and steam, it could be driven by a diesel engine, it could be driven by a gas turbine, it could be driven by a nuclear power plant. But fundamentally, it's a different technology to a sail in terms of driving a ship forward. So with a radical innovation, it's medium to high risk. Okay, now your risk level is much higher than an incremental innovation. There's much more that can go wrong when you're trying to develop this technology for the first time. However, potential higher returns. Potential higher returns because it's so much superior to the existing technology. If you can get this technology to work, people aren't going to want to use sails anymore because this is much more effective, much more efficient. You're no longer at the mercy of the winds and the tides and the currents. Potentially, a long-term advantage. A longer-term advantage because it's more difficult to copy. If you are in the sail-making industry and all of your skills and knowledge and capabilities and competencies are around sail-making, when this comes to the market, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to copy it because you don't have any of the knowledge, the skills, the capabilities, or the competencies around the different technologies that you require to make this work. Finally, you tend to look beyond the customer requirements. Now, that's not saying you're going to ignore your customers. You know, that's a bad thing to do for any business. But you're going to be a bit more detached, and you can maybe look beyond what customers think they might need in the future. There's a very, very famous quote by Henry Ford back in the 19th century, and he says, "If I'd have asked my customers what they'd have wanted, they would have said a faster horse. They wouldn't have said, we want an automobile." Okay, so sometimes you've got to look beyond your customer requirements, particularly when you're trying to achieve a radical innovation. And the last type of innovation, this is a transformational innovation. So transformational innovation characterized by a very high potential risk. However, very high potential rewards. So the balance between risk and reward is still in sync. Transformational innovations, they tend to be market defining, and to achieve a transformational innovation, organizations tend to have to look beyond their industry boundaries to get the insights that they need. So the example here, this is a container ship. This is how most international trade is conducted now. The problem in the shipbuilding industry was a lot of effort went into making ships bigger and faster and cheaper and requiring less crew. But the problem was, when you took them into the ports, it was very, very difficult to unload the goods, which tended to be in very small wooden boxes. Those boxes took a long time to unload. They're very easy to damage if you dropped them, and they're very easy to steal as well. So the container system was a transformational innovation that overcame this by having an integrated approach to the ships, the containers, and the transportation from the docks. Now you've got these very, very large stainless steel containers. They securely hold the goods. The goods aren't going to get damaged. It's very difficult to steal a container from a port. And now you can take the container, and you take the whole container, and now you can put it on the back of a lorry, or now you can put it on the back of a train. Okay, so the efficiency of international trade, it wasn't caused by bigger and better and faster and cheaper ships. It was this transformational innovation that came up with an integrated transportation system. Very difficult to actually achieve. So, we're going to explore in a bit more detail this really, really important aspect of innovation, which is where does the balance lie between risk and reward? And what are your own attitudes to the amount of risk that you're prepared to accept? So this is a situation, we're looking forward a few years, and it's good news. You've got your MSc, you're now very successful, and you're the director of new business development in a global company, and you're made aware of a technology investment opportunity where you're offered the following choices. Choice A, you can make £1 million profit with no risk. Okay, if you choose option A, you make £1 million profit with no risk. If you choose choice B, now you've got a 50-50 chance of either making £4 million profit or losing £1 million. Okay, so choice A, £1 million profit with no risk. Choice B, a 50-50 chance of either making 4 or losing 1. So what I'd like you to do individually, so do it on your own, is to think about which of those choices you would make, A or B. I'd like you to write your choice in front of you so you can't change your mind. And I'd like to give you just a minute to do that. Does everybody understand the task? Yes? Yes? Okay. Has everybody written it down in front of them? Is everybody ready to participate? Good. If you chose A, can you put your hand right up in the sky so I can see? Come on, A's, don't be shy. Wow, so almost no one over there, but everybody over there. I think that's between about 15 and 20% of the room. If you chose B, can I see your hand in the air? I think that's about 80% of the room. So by that calculation, everybody's participated, which is a great first start. Can I have somebody who chose A just to explain why they think A is a good choice? I know there was a lot of people over this side. Why do you feel comfortable with A as a first choice?
Firstly, the expectation is the same. They are both 1 million, and if I choose A, I can get 1 million. And with some formula, I calculate choice B is 1 million too. So if I can make more than 4 million profits, I will choose B. So in this situation, I will choose A.
Choose A
Yes.
because you know you're guaranteed to make $1 million.
Yeah.
You're not attracted to making the 4 million in B.
Yes, if I can make more than 4 millions, I will choose B.
So if this was 5 million,
Yes.
yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah? Go for it for 5. Someone over here, this is your chance for everlasting glory. Why did you choose A? Yes, sir.
So I think the 15% is high risk.
High risk, 50%.
Because we have 15% losing $1 million.
Yeah.
It's really high risk. So if he gives me $10 million stock, I will choose B.
Okay. So choice A, you're going to make $1 million and there's no risk, but you feel 50-50, they're not good odds, particularly if you're going to lose 1 million. If this 4 was higher, maybe you'd be tempted. Okay. I think that's quite sensible, isn't it? Making £1 million profit with no risk. Something inherently attractive about that proposition. But most of this class, I think it's fair to say, chose B. Can someone explain why they chose B? Both those hands up went simultaneously, so I'm going to go here first.
Okay. I think it's an easy decision, so I just calculate. I use expect. So expect A is 1 million return,
Yeah.
and expect B is 50% times 4 million minus 50% times 1 million.
Okay.
Equal to 1.5 million. So I chose.
So for B, you did a mathematical calculation and you said, I'm guaranteed to make 1.5 million, and that's higher. How are you guaranteed though? Because it's a 50-50, win 4, lose 1.
Just I use expectation.
That's what you would hope for. Can I have you, sir? Yep.
For the same, I think the expectation B is higher than A, and we can have a similar if first time we succeed and second time we fail. And first time we can earn 8 million, but and second time we can lose 2 million. So two times we can earn.
But this is a one-off opportunity. Okay. You'd expect to make more money in B. Okay. What's your name, sir?
My name?
Yeah.
Jeremy.
Jeremy? Well, Jeremy, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm going to make you an offer. I'm going to make you a 50-50 offer. This is my coin. That's a 50-50 chance. Yeah? So that's our queen. That's heads. That's tails. Do you want to check this coin? It's not two-sided or anything. Yeah, give it back. All right. So listen, this is your 50-50 chance. If you guess right, I'm going to award you a distinction grade in your master's program, irrespective of the grades you actually get. Don't tell the Vice-Chancellor, don't tell the Registrar. This will be a secret between you and me, the 200 people here, and the film crew. Okay? However, if you guess wrong, I'm going to fail you on your master's program, irrespective of the grades you actually get. Is that still an attractive proposition? Not so much. Not so much. Let's give Jeremy a clap for getting the right decision on that. Good. It's when you personalize risk. Okay, this is quite impersonal. Big company, lose £1 million, they can take it. They probably make lots of profits. But when you personalize risk to something that's really important to you, it takes on a whole different dimension. Okay? Some students, when I've done this test with, they say I'm not fair. They say that failing their master's degree is much, much worse than losing £1 million of their company's money. And, you know, some students, they just like the 50-50. Okay, they've got a high tolerance for risk. In my view, losing £1 million on a 50-50. Okay, imagine going into your boss's office on a sunny Wednesday morning, like this one, and saying, I've got some bad news. I've lost £1 million of the company's money on a 50-50 bet, but I thought it was the right thing to do because I could have won before. Okay, it's painful. In my professional career, I've never lost £1 million, but I have overspent a research budget by £3 million, which in the company's viewpoint is the same as losing £3 million. It's painful, okay, when it's personalized. But let me offer you another choice. So, this is in the future as well. You're still successful, few. You're still Director of New Business Development in a global company, and you're made aware of a technology investment opportunity where now you're offered these choices. Choice C, make £10 million profit with no risk. And choice D, 10 individual investments, each with a 50-50 chance of either making 4 million or losing 1 million. So same as before, I'm going to give you a minute, work individually, think about whether you prefer choice C or choice D, and then write it down in front of you, and we'll see where the balance lies across the class. Do you understand the task? Okay, great. Okay, so by way of hands in the air, if you chose choice C, can I see your hand in the air as high as you can? Is your hands up at the back? One hand, not many. I would say less than 5%. Can I ask why you like C?
When we make a choice, we need to consider the worst consequences. So if we choose D, we may lose £10 million.
Yeah.
If each investment make a failure. But if we choose C, we can get £10 million.
Yeah. So did you choose A before, or did you choose?
I choose B.
Okay, so you flipped over from liking a 50-50 to preferring the no risk.
Yeah, because 10
Yeah.
million is too large amount.
Yeah. You've got to think very, very hard before you turn down £10 million for no risk. You've got to think very, very hard. The other thing you said, which I think is important, you're thinking about, well, what would happen if these 50-50s you keep on losing? Okay? If you think it's bad going into your boss's office to say, I've lost £1 million, how much worse would it be to go into the office and say, well, now I've lost £5 million, or £6 million, or £7 million? There's still this element of risk there. Okay, so turning down 10 million with no risk, you've got to think quite carefully about. But I guess most of this class chose D. Can I just see D's? Yeah. I like the consistency in you two guys. I'm going to come to you. Why did you choose D? So,
Because according to inspection, the D can make a profit of 1.5 million.
okay.
50 million.
So you did a kind of expected value type calculation
Yes.
very quickly.
Yeah.
Was that the same for you? Because you used expected value before, didn't you, on a one-off 50-50? I don't think expected value is appropriate for one-offs, but a sequence, okay, a sequence of investments, maybe expected value does work. If you did expected value, this is the calculation that you would do. You would say that you would expect the value to be the number of investments times the payoff times the probability, which would be 10 number of investments times the payoff, which is 4 million minus 1 million, which is 3 million, times the probability, which is 0.5, and you would expect to have made £15 million if you choose choice D. £15 million, significantly more than £10 million, choice C. But it's a good question to ask yourself, what if you're unlucky? Okay, luck plays an important part in business, okay, more than we like to admit. Okay, if you're unlucky, how do you then go into your boss's office and explain your decision? Well, what you might do is go into binomial probabilities, and you might say, well, there's a 62.3% probability that I will make £15 million or more. To make the 10 or more, now there's an 82.8% probability I will make 10 million or more. To actually not make any money, wow, there's a 98.9% chance you'll make 0 or more. To actually make a loss, you have to be tremendously unlucky. You would have to have broken a mirror in the morning and crossed the path of about a dozen black cats, to be that unlucky. And there's an upside as well. A 37.7% chance of making £20 million or more. So when you've got a sequence of investments, you've got to consider the risk in a different way. You've got to be more prepared to accept the risks. This exercise has been done probably thousands of times across business schools around the world. I've just slightly repositioned it around the topic of innovation because risk and innovation, they go so closely together. It's an example of something called prospect theory, under the work from these behavioral economists, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics for looking at their work on how we look at risk and how we judge risks and how we manage risks. So prospect theory, when faced with a choice, most people prefer to avoid losses rather than to accept a risk to make a gain. Okay, so for most people, when this is done around the world, they prefer to avoid losses than take a risk to make a gain. How can we apply this to innovation? Well, innovation portfolios, they can help to mitigate risk and generate higher overall returns. So if you want to be successful at innovation, what you want to avoid is just having one huge innovation project that might succeed and might fail. And if it succeeds, the payoff will be large, and if it fails, you've lost all of your investments. Okay, the way to succeed with innovation is to have lots and lots of different innovation programs, all operating at the same time, all with a slightly different profile between risk and reward, because the overall payoffs will be higher than if you didn't take risk. We're going to finish off with this very, very, very short case study. This is it's about Apple's iPhone and going into the smartphone market. So what you can do in your own time is you can click through here to see Steve Jobs introduce the iPhone at Macworld 2007. See him present to investors why he thinks that the iPhone will be a successful innovation and be a very, very successful product for Apple. Some of you got iPhones? Have you got an iPhone? Yeah? If you've got a Nokia? just me then? Okay? So we know that the iPhone has been successful at the expense of incumbent companies like Nokia. So what I want you to tell me is, why do you think the iPhone has been successful? What has driven the success of the iPhone? If you've got an iPhone, why did you buy it when you've got so many other choices in the marketplace? Why would you buy an iPhone instead of, I don't know, a Nokia or a HTC?
I think it's iPhone's brand image and its company culture.
Yeah, there's a very, very strong brand image with Apple. It's a kind of premium brand, isn't it? Yeah, so the premium brand, for that premium brand, you may be prepared to pay the premium price for an iPhone. Mm.
Steve Jobs other company, when they produce a new product, they will think what we should do and how we should do and why we should do. But Steve Jobs said they should think how we should do and then why we should do and at last what we should do.
Yeah, so Steve Jobs, he kind of flipped it around. So a lot of companies in high technology markets, they develop the technology and they think about how to apply it to customers. But Steve Jobs, he tried to flip it around. He said, well, what do I feel that customers are going to want and value, and then develop the technology to deliver that. So when they developed the iPhone, they tried to make it very simple to use, very user-friendly, very, very intuitive, okay, because that's what he thought customers wanted. And guess what? They did, and they're prepared to pay the price for it. Second question. Well, we know the iPhone has been very, very successful. It underpins Apple's position as the most successful company in the world. But at the time, in 2007, what level of risk do you feel Apple took in changing their product strategy and launching the iPhone? They're doing something different. So there's going to be risks involved. There's going to be technological risks. Will it work? There's going to be market risks. Are people going to buy it? But what level of risk do you think they took? If you think they took a really low risk, can I just see your hands up? A low risk because?
I remember a story about the iPhone before the introduction of the conference. Jobs just make many research about customers related to this product. I know the people will like this iPhone pretty much. So I think they noticed when he just sell this product to people.
Yeah, so it's a new product, but before that launch, they did a load of market research. They know they've got a core set of customers, and they know they've got expertise in developing and marketing new technologies. So all of those can kind of mitigate the level of risk to some way. If you think there was a medium level of risk, you see your hand?
Personally, this iPhone is a revolution product, so maybe some customer will buy it, but lots of people maybe can't accept it. Because, for example, if some place have just like China, in 2007 our salary is low, so some people hard to afford this price. So maybe just like me, I don't buy iPhone. So I think it's medium risk.
So it's not guaranteed as a success, because it might not appeal to all of the market for smartphones. It might actually appeal to a very small niche of smartphone users. And if you want to have a global success, you've actually got to expand further than a small niche. If you think that the risk was high, I just see a hand in the air, straight up. Yep.
Yeah, they have completely changed the paradigm of phone to the platform. It's not only phone, it's also kind of a new platform for developing new applications, new ecosystem for safety and security of the data. It's a big investment from at that point of time with Apple's financial health.
Okay, so the amount of investment required to actually get it off the ground is very, very large. Okay, so if it hadn't have succeeded, you've lost that investment, and that might have a damaging effect on the overall company. Yeah, you know, the risks are probably quite high. You know, one thing you need to consider when you're looking at risks is your competitors. If you're going to go into an existing market for the first time, you've got to be thinking about the strength of your competitors. At the time that Apple went into the smartphone market, Nokia had sold 2 billion phones. Can you imagine what 2 billion phones looks like if you kind of like stacked them up? Okay, and the new competitor comes in, Apple, they've sold none. On top of that, they're selling at a very, very high price point. Okay, they have to sell at a high price point to protect the premium brand of Apple. They can't have a discounted price for their premium product. Damages the brand. Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft at the time, when he was asked about Apple's entry into the smartphone market, he said, they've launched the most expensive smartphone in the market by far, and they've sold 0. Let's see how they do. Okay, significant risks at the time. But I'm going to leave you with this, this last point on the lecture, this last insight about risk. Imagine you're Apple and you're in the boardroom in 2007 trying to make this very, very difficult decision about whether to go into the smartphone market and whether the risks are worth the reward. If you're Apple and your products and your market is consumer electronic devices, and you look into the future, and in the future you think that the dominant consumer electronic device in the world by far will be the smartphone, and you're not in the market because in 2007 you weren't prepared to take the risk, that might have the most damaging effect on Apple as a company. So when we look at risk, mainly we look at the risks of doing something, but sometimes the risks of not doing something, of inertia, of inaction, can be the biggest risk facing a company. So on that note, I will say thank you very much. You've been a great audience. I'm very, very happy to take any questions that you might have on innovation management or anything else. Thank you.